A timestamp can be perfectly precise and still lead you to the wrong conclusion. Welcome to this explainer. If you're a cybersecurity professional, an auditor, an investigator, or maybe a business leader, you know that we are constantly forced to make really high-stakes decisions based on digital telemetry. And look, it's so easy to glance at those highly detailed dashboards and just assume they represent absolute ground truth reality. But today, we're going to establish a serious analytical standard for evaluating those system records.
Like we just said, it is incredibly easy to fall into the trap of false comfort. We see technical precision on a screen, timestamps down to the millisecond, and our brains automatically equate that with evidentiary truth. But as we're going to see throughout this explainer, precision is absolutely not the same thing as accuracy. So there's a core disconnect we need to address right out of the gate. A system will accurately record an event, a time, and an account. That's what it does. However, that data does not automatically establish the actual person sitting behind the keyboard. It doesn't tell us their intent, the broader context of the action, or the complete story. At the end of the day, a log is really just a machine-generated claim. Let's ground this with a scenario we'll carry with us. Imagine an office officially closes at 11 p.m. You pull up a timeline the next day and see that at 2:14 a.m., a specific employee account accessed a highly sensitive corporate system. Now, the log definitively says this happened. But does this log, all on its own, actually prove that the employee performed the action? I mean, were they just working late? Were their credentials compromised? Could it have been an automated script running in the background? The log alone literally cannot answer those questions. So, to prevent us from making incredibly costly, sometimes disastrous mistakes in our investigations, we need a structured approach. Before you rely on digital telemetry to draw serious conclusions, you have to apply what we call the 5-layer log validation test. It's a specific, highly analytical framework. Let's walk through it.
We start with Layer 1, Provenance.
The absolute very first question you, as an investigator, should ask is, where did this log actually come from? You need to trace the evidence back to its raw origin. Identify the original system. What software version was running at the time? Are you looking at a native, untouched record, or is this an export? And exactly who extracted it? The key takeaway here is pretty straightforward. A spreadsheet controlling log entries is not necessarily the original log. Every single time data is exported, formatted, or dropped into an executive report, you're introducing another step between the system event and yourself. Verifying provenance prevents the critical mistake of trusting a copied and potentially filtered spreadsheet as the unadulterated truth of our 2:14 a.m. login. Moving right along to Layer 2, Configuration. Okay, for this layer, you have to ask, what was the system actually capable of seeing? It is a really dangerous assumption to just believe that a system automatically logs everything. You have to dig in and examine the enabled events, the exclusions, the actual system coverage, and the retention rules. Basically, you're asking, was this system even configured to properly record an after-hours access event in the first place? And this brings us to a fundamental rule of investigations. Missing evidence matters only if the system could have captured it. Let's say our midnight login doesn't show up in a secondary security log. You might quickly assume, well, the event didn't actually happen then. But checking Layer 2 prevents that mistake. It forces you to verify if that secondary log was even turned on for that specific type of event.
Next up is Layer 3, Integrity. Now the question becomes, could the record have changed? You need to prove the evidence hasn't been tampered with. How? By checking cryptographic hashes, carefully reviewing who actually holds administrator permissions, and verifying things like immutable cloud storage or read-only backups. Because you have to remember, technical appearance is not proof of technical integrity. A timestamp can look flawless, accurate down to the microsecond, but this layer prevents the mistake of blindly trusting that precise-looking data when, in reality, a single administrator could have secretly altered that 2:14 a.m. login record without leaving any independent audit trail. Now for Layer 4, Attribution. The vital question to ask yourself here is, what does this event actually identify? You have to rigorously separate the machine from the human. You separate the account, the credentials, and the device from the human operator. Our 2:14 a.m. log might perfectly prove that a specific account and a specific laptop were used, but does it actually identify the living, breathing human beings supplying those credentials? This is such a massive pitfall. A username is an identifier. It is not a witness. Passwords can be shared, tokens can be stolen, sessions can be hijacked remotely.
Validating attribution prevents the absolute disaster of firing, or worse, legally prosecuting an employee for that midnight action just because their username happened to be on the log.
Finally, we reach layer 5, corroboration.
You must ask, what independent source confirms this? For a midnight login, you have to look beyond the primary system. You are hunting for genuinely independent evidence. We're talking about VPN endpoint records, device certificates, separate network telemetry, or even physical building access logs. And I really want to emphasize this warning. 10 dashboards are not 10 independent confirmations if they all share the exact same data source. True corroboration must come from systems with entirely different owners, different failure modes, and different architectural purposes. Layer 5 prevents you from making the mistake of confusing the sheer quantity of alerts with actual independent proof. So let's look at your summary checklist. Where did it originate? What could it capture? Could it have been altered? What does it really identify? And what independent source confirms it? Applying this rigorous 5-question framework prevents false certainty from making your next investigation expensive, inaccurate, and, frankly, unjust. Which brings us to our conclusion and the standard you need to carry forward into your work. A log is evidence. Its reliability must be demonstrated. Don't trust paper automatically. Don't trust systems automatically. Validate both. This analytical framework, the 5-layer log validation test, was developed by Semvanski Labs and Research. So the next time you're staring at a perfectly precise timestamp on a beautiful dashboard, I want you to ask yourself, have I actually validated the machine, or am I just trusting the screen? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.